Hello friends, I am Tom Downey and welcome into the Cowboys Report presented by The Guild. You heard Jason Garrett hint at it there. The Cowboys have indeed added some safeties, although not the guys I'm sure many of you want. We'll start off with the original one. That was Dominique Sanders, an undrafted free agent out of Georgia. I was actually a little surprised that Sanders never found a team after the draft, and he's been unsigned since then. At the very least, I thought he could be a capable camp body. Sanders does face a tough path to actually make the roster at safety. Here's how the depth chart currently sits for the Cowboys at the defensive back spot, with everyone healthy. Now, Jeff Heath, Xavier Woods are your ideal starters there. Kevon Frazier, Cam Kelly, Tyree Robinson, Marquise Enough are your next men up. But as we'll get to later on and more in depth in the show, Xavier Woods also banged up right now. So the Cowboys, they need bodies at safety. And they found one more today in Jerron Johnson, who, as we've seen several times this offseason, has a familiarity with Chris Richard. Now, Johnson did not play football last release during the regular season, was signed in August by the Jags and then cut in September. He was actually coaching high school football when the Cowboys picked up the phone, brought him in for a workout, and they signed him today, actually only about an hour and a half ago. He could help quickly in the preseason given the time he has spent with Chris Richard and with Xavier Woods banged up. With Jamil Showers out for the year with a torn ACL, it leaves the Cowboys precariously thin at the safety spot. In all likelihood, week one, it's going to be Kevon Frazier, Jeff Heath as your starters, and then the backups, I think, are a bit of an issue. Cam Kelly has not looked all that great so far this offseason. Tyree Robinson hasn't looked spectacular either. You've also got Marquise Huff and now Jerron Johnson are your next men up. I don't feel overly confident about the safety spot right now. So if I were the Cowboys, yeah, I'm going out and setting a third safety. Now, George Iloka is out there. We'll talk about him. Of course, Earl Thomas is as well. I'm typing in yes. If I'm Dallas, I cannot be satisfied with the guys I currently have at safety, because if there's another injury or Frazier/Heath don't play that well, the Cowboys are in big, big trouble. All right, next up, the defensive line got an addition there. Richard Ash, he is out for the year. So the Cowboys signed the recently cut Karan Reed, cut by the Colts on August 18th, a former fifth-round pick out of Princeton, Jason Garrett's alma mater, by the Lions. Had some starts in the NFL, has never really hung around one spot for too long. It's kind of been more or less a journeyman throughout his NFL career. He now joins the Dallas Cowboys. Again, a fifth-round pick out of Princeton. He could compete for a roster spot, but in reality, I think he's behind Antoine Woods, behind Jihad Ward, Brian Price, Daniel Ross, Lewis Neal, and so on. The reality is for the Cowboys, you need bodies just to get through the preseason and practice. I think Reed might end up being one of those camp body types. Today's show was brought to you by The Guild. Visit stayguild.com. Promo code ChatSports for 15% off your next stay. If you're coming to Dallas to see a Cowboys game, you got to stay with the Guild, and that promo code is ChatSports for 15% off. One more addition here for the Cowboys as they more or less churned at the bottom of the roster. They have brought in an undrafted free agent center, Jacob Onasorgi out of South Dakota State. Remember, Travis Frederick is banged up. Zack Martin is hurt. Marcus Martin is out for the year. The Cowboys needed more bodies on the interior. With Frederick and Martin not likely to play at all in the preseason, I'd be stunned if they did. It leaves Joe Looney as really the only guy with center experience. Now Onasorgi can come in and give you some snaps, especially if you want Joe Looney to get some reps at right guard. We put Kadeem Edwards there at left guard. I would imagine that Edwards actually gets the starting nod at right guard over Damian Mama and others in week 3 of the preseason. But I would not be surprised if during week 3, at least at some point during the game, you see Joe Looney get some reps at guard just in case the Cowboys need him. After all, Looney is your top interior backup offensive lineman. Those are the Cowboys news. We'll take you now to the Cowboys rumors. First up, are Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott done for the rest of the preseason? Well, if you ask Jerry Jones, it's 4 stars, but I'm not quite as convinced here. In reality, I don't think you're going to see Zeke play at all, and for this rumor in particular, I'll give it 3 stars. So Zeke, I think, is not going to play at all. I'll actually give that one 4 stars. Dak Prescott, I'm not quite as convinced, so I'll give it 2 stars there. Add them together, you end up with 3 stars there. Simple math. Jones says he doesn't want to see Zeke or Dak because he feels comfortable that those guys have played enough. And again, I don't think you'll see Zeke on the field, but I still think Prescott could actually kind of use some more reps to get some more chemistry with wide receivers. Guys like Dante Thompson, Tavon Austin, Cole Beasley, maybe not Cole so much, but they've missed a little bit of time. So from the Cowboys' perspective, I am okay giving Dak more preseason reps, but I don't think it needs to be a full half. In reality, he kind of got that last week. I'm fine with it being a quarter at most for the Cowboys. They've looked pretty efficient, pretty solid there, despite having some guys hurt. And most importantly, I don't like the idea of Dak Prescott hanging out there for a long time with Joe Looney and Kadeem Edwards on the interior of the offensive line. I will be cautious. I would say, yeah, you can give him some reps, but it really shouldn't be all that many. All right, next up, George Iloka. Is he going to come to the Dallas Cowboys? This is a 4-star rumor in my heart, but in reality, I think it's only a 1-star. I just don't think it's going to go down. If I were in charge of the Cowboys, I would have signed Iloka instantly. Of course, I would have already had a safety, but the Cowboys do have interest here in getting George Iloka. The issue is for Iloka and for the Cowboys is that, well, the Cowboys signed 2 safeties today, as I mentioned earlier in the show, Jaron Johnson and Dominique Sanders. They will not get into a bidding war with Iloka either. The Cowboys, since they've signed 2 safeties, and oh, by the way, one more note here on Iloka, he's been rather outspoken about his support for those who have knelt during the national anthem, which, as we know, will not go over well with Mr. Jerry Jones. So I think there's interest there. The Cowboys seem hesitant to throw money at safeties right now, and the way Jason Garrett has spoke makes it seem like they're really confident in their top 3 guys, and they're not overly concerned about the 4th option. I'd sign him in a heartbeat. He can play free safety and strong safety. He's exactly what the Cowboys have said they want in a safety, a guy that can play both high and low in terms of the safety spots there. I'd sign him in a heartbeat. I'm putting in there a 1. I think they definitely should sign George Iloka, but I don't consider it all that likely, even though I really wish the Cowboys would go out and do that. All right, we'll keep it rolling here with some more rumors. Stick with the secondary theme here. Is Byron Jones going to stay at cornerback? Well, 4 stars on this one, thank goodness. Chris Richard was not playing around. He was asked about it, like, hey, could the Cowboys move Byron back to safety? And Chris Richard goes, Byron plays corner, Byron plays corner, Byron plays corner, Byron plays corner. 4 stars, simple fact here. You're not going to see Byron Jones move back to safety. And frankly, thank goodness. He's looked good on the outside. I would much rather put Byron at cornerback, as I've been saying for quite some time. That is a more natural fit for Byron Jones at the cornerback spot rather than safety. Folks, today's clothing is provided by Mizzen and Main. If you want your own super comfortable dress shirt, go to comfortable.af because these shirts are indeed comfortable as F. All right, next up on our Cowboys rumors roundup is Xavier Woods out for week 1. Not official yet by any means, but it does certainly seem that way. 3 stars on this one. Jerry Jones came out and said that they didn't think the Cowboys would have Woods for week 1. Says he's looking forward to his year, but, quote, we probably won't have him for the first game, but I think we'll be fine back there. That leaves Jeff Heath and Kevon Frazier as your starters at the back end. Heath as more of the free safety, Kevon Frazier as your strong safety box guy. I, frankly, am very worried about the safety spot right now because with no Woods in week 1, these are your starters, Frazier and Heath, but God forbid someone gets hurt. Are you going to throw out an undrafted first-year guy in Tyree Robinson or Cam Kelly? Robinson has looked better than Kelly. Kelly couldn't cut it at cornerback, got moved to safety, hasn't looked all that great. And as I've said many times on this show, the Cowboys' defense on the 2nd and 3rd teams have been really bad, especially the secondary. Go out and sign George Iloka, but the Cowboys don't seem all that interested. Next up, are Zack Martin and Travis Frederick going to play in week 1 of the season? I'm going to give this one 3 stars. Now, we'll talk more about the report about Frederick in a second, but Jerry Jones says he thinks Martin and Frederick should play in week 1. I feel relatively confident about Zack Martin in particular right now. He avoided the serious knee injury. Sounds like he's going to be fine. Travis Frederick, though, continues to deal with stingers. Jones says the second opinion that Frederick got was positive, but as we move now to our next rumor, maybe it wasn't, or maybe the Cowboys aren't super sold on that one. Could Travis Frederick undergo surgery? I will give this one just the 1 star, but there is a bit of kernel of truth to this. Namely, the report from the Dallas Morning News was that despite Jerry Jones' comments, the team itself and Frederick haven't decided on a plan yet. They're not super sure, A, and I think what the exact injury is right now, B, how severe it could become, or D, what they're going to do with Travis Frederick. So the report from the Dallas Morning News was at the very end, because the Cowboys haven't figured out their plan, surgery has not been ruled out. Now, that is, I think, a bit of an overstatement to what's going on right now. I don't think it's more of a, oh, there could be surgery. It's less of we're not super sure yet, so we're not ruling anything out at all. I don't consider surgery likely. I think this is more of a, hey, we're gonna be cautious here. Surgery is not on the table in terms of an ideal or even likely outcome, but it is something that could go down. So I don't think it's all that likely, but we will continue to monitor, and hopefully he's okay, because I only put it at a 3 or a 4 right now for my scale of, concern. But you need Travis Frederick out on the field if the Cowboys want to win games. They need him at center. He is the premier player at that position in the NFL. All right, next up on our rumors roundup is Rico Gathers going to get some first-team work in week 3 of the preseason. We'll break that down after a quick word from our sponsor, The Guild. Three stars on this one coming from Todd Archer, who says that Rico might get some more playing time and could get some more playing time with the first team unit. Actually got some on yesterday's practice, caught a little hot route check down pass from Dak Prescott. So there are really two ways to look at this for Rico Gathers in terms of how this will impact his chances of making the roster. Now, note, first of all here, if the Cowboys are serious about Rico making the roster, the best thing is to naturally give him first-team reps. And maybe this would give Rico a real shot at making the team. In reality, he has been stuck behind Dalton Schultz, behind Jeff Swain, behind Blake Jarwin in no particular order on the Cowboys depth. But the Cowboys, folks, are keeping those first 3 guys. It's a matter of whether or not they take a 4th tight end. And if Rico actually gets the reps with the first team and looks competent, namely in the red zone of the passing game, maybe he can force the Cowboys' hand. But there's also another possibility here for the Cowboys. Could the Cowboys be showcasing Rico Gathers for a trade? I tweeted this out last night. It was less controversial than I thought it was going to be. I'll give it 2 stars for now. Still more on the speculation side of things from my end. But it does make some sense. The Cowboys, for starters, have listed Rico as their number 3 tight end on the team's official depth charts, even though he hasn't actually been the team's number 3 tight end based on the reps in the preseason games. Now, the number 1 rule in reality, folks, of roster management is if you're going to cut somebody, you try and trade them first. Now, the number 1 way to do that is to inflate or make it seem like you value them more. Step 1, put him higher on the team's depth chart. Step 2 is to actually showcase that player. The Cowboys can do that in week 3 of the preseason. Now, the comments by Jerry Jones and by others have hinted the team isn't really all that committed to Rico Gathers. You don't have to take my word for it. You can listen to what Jerry Jones said last night, or not last night, or this week, when he says the angst comes when you cut Rico, or you keep Rico to cut somebody else, which is the exact opposite of how the Cowboys should feel. But I don't think the Cowboys staff is truly committed to Rico Gathers in the same way that they were earlier. Dalton Schultz, in reality, has kind of become the Cowboys' new pet project at tight end alongside of Blake Jarwin. So I would put Rico on the 53-man roster over a guy like Lance Lenoir, over a Noah Brown, but I don't think the Cowboys feel that way. And if that's the case, they could very well showcase Gathers in week 3, hype up everyone around Rico and even the fans too, and then try and trade him and get something back in exchange. Folks, trying to get to 5K subscribers on our Cowboys Report channel. We've passed 2K mark. Thank you all very much. 5K is the next benchmark there. Head to chatsports.com/CowboysTV to subscribe. It'll take you right into the subscribe page. Thank you all who've already done so on the Cowboys Report. All right, one last rumor here is Shawn Lee among the most underrated NFL players. 4 stars. It is a fact, F-A-C-K, just like Jim Harbaugh spells it. I will fight anyone who argues with me on this. There are few players more valuable to their defense than Shawn Lee. He is an instrumental player to the Cowboys. And if you don't like Shawn Lee, we are not friends. I'm sorry. Just take a look at the last 3 years with Shawn Lee versus without Shawn Lee in the field. It is astonishing. The last 3 years with Shawn Lee on the field for the Dallas Cowboys, they have allowed 19.6 points per game and 278 yards. Without Shawn Lee, it's 32.7 and 376. So about 100 yards and 2 touchdowns difference. It's not a surprise then that, Shawn Lee, when he's on the field, the Cowboys are 8-2 and 1-5 without him. The Cowboys need Shawn Lee on the field, and if you ignore the injuries and go across a 16-game season, no player has had more tackles than Shawn Lee. If you ignore the injuries, Shawn Lee is a no-doubt top 3 off-ball linebacker, i.e. no pass rushers. He is definitely among the most underrated players in the NFL. Folks, those were your Cowboys rumors. Next up, time for the mailbag. I did promise to get to it. Sorry it took a little bit longer than anticipated. First up, TJ. Who will have a bigger bounce-back year, Jaylon Smith or Anthony Brown? Well, it's a no-brainer for me. It's Jaylon Smith. Smith, I think, looks really, really good right now. Anthony Brown, not so much. Let's just call it inconsistent. Smith, I think, is going to play a key cog in this Cowboys defense. You'll see him blitz more as well. He is going to be a starter for the Cowboys. A middle linebacker or strong side linebacker. Hopefully, Shawn Lee, of course, plays all 16 games. But for me, it's an obvious Jaylon Smith. Next up from Anthony, and, well, quite a few on these. No surprise here. Anything new in trading for Earl Thomas? Anything? There is not. There is no progress on an Earl Thomas to the Cowboys trade. And I want to make note of this as well because I keep hammering this point home, and some, mainly you non-Cowboys Report watchers, don't seem to get it. This is not up to the Cowboys. This is not a decision that the Cowboys say, oh yeah, we'll pick up the phone and we'll go trade for Earl Thomas. This is between the Seahawks and Earl Thomas. If Seattle wants to trade Earl Thomas, they'll call the Cowboys. There's nothing that Jerry Jones can do beyond offering a first pick, which he's not going to do, to get the Cowboys to trade for Earl Thomas. It's not in Dallas's hands. Instead, it's all dependent on Seattle. So, folks, let me know if you want Dallas to go get Earl Thomas, especially in light of the Xavier Woods injury, which brings us to our next question. Namely, with all the injuries to the safeties, would it be more possible and beneficial for the Seahawks to force the Cowboys to try and trade for someone like Earl Thomas, i.e., does injuries make it more likely? And again, an Earl Thomas trade, folks, does not depend on the Cowboys calling the Seahawks. It is completely up to right now. Seattle and GM John Snyder saying, you know what? We're not going to extend Earl Thomas. We're done with the holdout stuff. Let's pick up the phone and try and trade him. Seattle hasn't done that. All right. Yeah, injuries could increase the asking price, but not Seattle's desire to go trade away Earl Thomas. So there's nothing for the Cowboys to do right now but sit and wait for ET. Now, if and when that changes, of course, we'll let you know. But as of right now, there really isn't anything of note beyond the fact the standard updates that nothing has really changed so far for the Cowboys, Earl Thomas, and the Seattle Seahawks. Bray wants to know if I see the Cowboys trading for anyone besides Earl Thomas. I would make note of an offensive lineman, I hope, and maybe even an interior defensive lineman as well. Demetrius asks, would you rather trade for an okay player at safety or an interior offensive lineman for depth? Can I pick both? Is that an option? Because I don't like where either situation fits right now in terms of the overall depth for the Cowboys. We'll start at defensive back, and if Heath, Woods, and Frazier are healthy, okay, I'm comfortable enough, I guess, relative to where they are without Xavier, which is where they are right now. You cannot enter week 1 of the preseason with Jeff Heath, Kavon Frazier, and a bunch of dudes off the street on the depth chart right now, because that's where they're at right now. You cannot do that. So, and hamstring injuries, by the way, tend to linger. So go sign somebody via a roster cut, a trade. Give me somebody else out there at safety, because right now it is not good enough. The same is true, though, for the offensive line. We've seen how bad it is with the second and third string. And right now, you at least have the possibility, I don't think it's all that likely, that Frederick and Zach Martin are going to be banged up for week 1. All of a sudden, you're starting Tyron Smith, Connor Williams, Lael Collins, Kadeem Edwards, and Joe Looney. That's gross. Like, that's a surefire way to have Zeke limited production and have to get Dak Prescott hurt. So you better find, I think, both in reality. In terms of which I think they'll address more likely, I think it'll be the offensive line. I think you'll see the Cowboys be it roster cuts or even a last-second trade before the season starts to get somebody in there, because you don't want Chaz Green on that roster and you need more depth overall. Folks, if you like the shirt that I'm wearing, you can get one of your own at Mizzen and Main. Comfortable.af is the website. It is the most comfortable dress shirt you will ever own. All right, next up on my mailbag, Film Productions wants to know who are the top 3 cities that I would go trade for. No Earl Thomas lad. Well, Phil, I went a little bit further here. I picked out 5 guys for you. As I've said before, Derek Kindred makes sense as a box safety. Miles Killebrew kind of fills that same role. I'll throw out a guy like Quentin Rollins, who might get cut by the Packers, can play almost any spot. Nickel corner, some outside corner, some safety, some dime linebacker. Injuries have been a problem for him, but there's some upside there. Obi Melifonwu is probably my ideal target. He hasn't done much for Oakland. He's been banged up as well, but I don't know if Oakland would actually trade him away. And if so, how expensive would it be? Bennett Jackson, I'm trying to find a fifth guy there. I had a Bengals guy in there, funny enough, and then they cut George Iloka, so I took that off the list there. But Bennett Jackson has some cornerback experience, could maybe be a special teams guy, but overall, it's tough to find quality backup safeties because for the most part, teams don't cut those guys. So Kindred makes the most sense to me if Cleveland is willing to give him away. From Sloan now, if the Xavier Woods injury is severe, who are the third and the fourth safeties as of right now? First off, great question. As I've hinted at, in terms of free safety, it is Tyree Robinson, the undrafted rookie out of Oregon. Has looked the most competent of the undrafted guys so far, I think, among the defensive backs at safety. Maybe Jerron Johnson takes over as the number 4 at strong safety, but my hope is that it's somebody else not on the roster because I don't like where the Cowboys sit at depth at safety. All right, Jordan wants to know if there are any free agent offensive linemen worth a look right now. Mentions Richie Incognito. I'll put him on this list here, but I'm treating Richie like the Grinch. I'm not touching him with a 6-foot pole. He also just got arrested again today because, well, he's kind of the head case out there. You can throw out a guy like a Zane Beadles who has kind of fallen away by the wayside in recent years. Alex Boone, I wouldn't mind. Jahari Evans would be my first choice, but he wants to be a starter only. He won't come back for a backup job, I don't think. So if Martin is actually seriously injured, maybe it's Evans, but I don't think it's all that likely. And I've seen some people throw out the name Luke Jokel, which, I mean, you can bring him in, but he's kind of, at this point, Chaz Green, who was drafted higher. That's kind of what Luke Jokel has become in the NFL. Folks, today's show is brought to you by The Guild. If you're going to come visit me and the Cowboys for a game, you got to stay with The Guild. Go to stayguild.com, promo code CHATSPORTS for 15% off your next stay. They're kind of like a luxury Airbnb. All right, time to talk Rico Gathers because, well, of course we're going to talk Rico on today's mailbag. Derek wants to know, doesn't know why the Cowboys didn't bring back Rico last year. Says he knows the blocking is an issue, but the season was a bust midway through. And he says if they keep 3 tight ends, I don't see any way they keep Schultz over Gathers, and is still stretching his head over the pick used on Dalton Schultz. Derek, I like you, but there's a lot of revisionist history going on here. For starters, the season was not a bust midway through. The Cowboys were in the playoff hunt until Week 16. They were up in it all the way. Namely, Rico Gathers, I think, for starters, not getting pulled up off the practice squad or coming back from injury was his wake-up call. I don't know if he took it as seriously as he maybe should have. So that was a big issue there for the Cowboys overall at tight end. Dalton Schultz, let's not revise history and say that, oh, this was why the Cowboys decided to get rid of Rico. Like, they needed a tight end. That was a quality selection. It's not a matter of Rico versus Dalton. But Dalton Schultz was a good pick. We'll see how he develops. But there were not many tight ends. I saw one guy say Dalton Schultz was a 6th-round pick. No, he wasn't. He was one of the last reliable tight ends on the roster. So it wasn't a battle there between, oh, they shouldn't have taken Dalton Schultz. And for Rico, it's not just the blocking. The pass catching, upside-wise, is the best on the team. But the other issue for Rico is that it's not just the blocking that's an issue. There are times, and Jason Garrett has said it, Jerry Jones has said it, stop calling me a hater. This is the reality right now for Rico Gathers. There are times he still doesn't quite understand the nuances of football. And that's not a big surprise because it's really tough for a player who hasn't played football in a long time to get the blocking assignments into, oh, the front has changed. How do I adjust? So I'm taking Schultz over Rico on this roster, and I think the Cowboys are as well right now. But in reality, why not both? Demetrius wants to know who is making the team, Noah Brown or Rico Gathers. Might not be either of them. Noah Brown can't get on the field, and it's tough to make a team when you're not healthy. And then for Rico, as I've said many times, the Cowboys staff doesn't seem to love him. Next one up here from Film Productions. If I can only keep one, am I keeping Lance Lenoir or Rico Gathers? Give me Rico. I kind of think Lance Lenoir is just a guy. Rico can be more than a guy. Maybe Lance helps you out more right now on special teams, but I would rather have Rico on my roster. So there are a couple guys, I think, fighting for a last roster spot, 2, 3 of them or so. Noah Brown, Lance Lenoir, you can throw in Deontay Thompson as well. Mike White, Rico Gathers, and Darius Jackson. Look, I would put Rico on this roster because he can help you out so much in the passing game. But the Cowboys coaching staff doesn't feel the same way. James wants to know if I'll stop talking if Rico becomes the next Gates. No, I'll probably either be A, happy that he's on the roster with the Cowboys, or B, angry that he's on a different team right now. Mark wants to know if the Cowboys still believe in Chaz Green's upside, how can they not believe in Rico Gathers' upside and potential? Does it make sense from a talent evaluation standpoint? Well, I think the Cowboys are about done on Chaz Green and his upside there. As for Rico, look, it's a trust issue. And Rico hasn't developed the way that they've wanted him to do so far. In the end, though, Chaz Green, I don't think is big in this roster, so at least that's a good thing, right? All right, Kelvin Bay wants to know, if Paxton Lynch gets cut by Denver, will the Cowboys sign him? I could see it. The Cowboys did like Lynch coming out, but he has not been the guy anyone thought he was going to be. He's been a complete bust for Denver. Yeah, Dallas almost moved up to get him, and by the way, how funny could it have been? The Cowboys wanted Paxton Lynch. They didn't get him. They wanted Connor Cook. They didn't get him, and instead they got the best quarterback by far out of all three in Dak Prescott, who was at most their third option there. So lucky break there for the Cowboys, right? But the issue for Lynch in Denver, it actually costs more money to cut him. So it might be a moot point, but I don't think it would happen anyway. Marcelo B asks that he prefers Rush over Bridgewater in a situation. Asks, why do you keep two backup quarterbacks on the 53-man roster? Well, namely, because you might get lucky again. What happens if Mike White or Cooper Rush actually develops into a good player? It is so much more valuable to have a quality backup quarterback than, a fourth tight end, for example, upside-wise, even if that guy is Rico. So that's why they'll keep three. I don't know if they'll keep Mike White. He hasn't looked all that good in the preseason. And Jordan wants to know, do we see Gallup starting week 1? I don't know if he'll come out with the starters, but Gallup will see plenty of playing time in week 1. Maybe not a full-on starting role, but he's going to be actively involved.